Hi, it's Dorothy guiding with Scrapbooking Quebec. This week I'm joining the Punched Out Thursday to Die For collaboration. We share ideas every Thursday on what to do with your punches and your dies. I'll put links to all the other participants below, so be sure to check out what they're up to. It's summer, some may be on vacation. However, all the channel links will be there. I'm going to be creating this layout here, and I'll be using dies to set up my foundation page and punches and an embossing folder to create my embellishments. Now you're about to see the consumables, and most of it is material from Tim Holtz, along with that wood grain paper. That's from Simple Stories. And you're about to see the tools I'll be using, and I'll talk more about these throughout the process, and everything I do use will be listed in the description box below. Many of these are basic shapes. However, for some of them, I will be suggesting substitutes. So here's what's on my desk. I prepared a frame style foundation with 3 sheets of paper, and this time I only gutted one of them because the paper in the middle there is really thin. It's from Creative Memories, so I left it full. But there is a tutorial on my channel where I create a frame style foundation and gut the middle, so I will link that up below. I'm showing you the paper there. Most of it comes from that Tim Holtz Backdrops collection. I do have a handful of scraps, including that metallic Kraft cardstock from Tim Holtz. That's all going to be for embellishing later on. I showed you that chicken wire paper, an old product from Stampin Up. And I'm going to show you the photos. Now at this point I have a 3.5 by 5 and 2 wallet size ones, but I do trim them down. However, that's what I'm starting with. I have a basket full of tools handy, and I do have a tray. Now what's in here is mostly all my products from Tim Holtz, but I end up only using, aside from the paper, those tags that I just showed you. So the first thing I'm going to do is trim down my photos. So I'm going to take these photos and I'm going to turn them into hexagons. So one of them is going to be kind of a medium one and 2 smaller ones. And I'll put measurements for everything I'm doing on the screen. But what I want you to take note is your punches and your dies are perfect for punching out photos as well as paper. So it's just a fun thing to do with your tools as well. Once I get these photos cut down, what I'm going to do is cut out a bunch more hexagons in the printed paper. So I'm using 4 different printed papers, and I'm cutting out these stitched hexagons. Again, those are dies from Close to My Heart. If I haven't mentioned it, again, they'll be listed in the description box below. I'm cutting out 10 of them in paper and just kind of in a variety of prints here, and then I'm going to be playing around with them. And I'm going to talk in a minute about how I actually play around with basic shapes on a page before I actually commit to adhering them on the page. So you can see here everything I've cut out, the photos as well as the hexagons, and I'm showing you my jumping off point, which was on page 49 of Scrapbooking Cards Today of their current issue. It's by Erica Thompson. Basically, it was a great jumping off point, but I don't really scrap lift it. And I showed you those pink hexagons there a moment ago. That's because I store those with my dies. Basically, it's a bunch of hexagons cut from that die set in different sizes. And before I cut out my papers in the paper that I'm going to use on a layout and adhere them to a page, I'll often play with those just to get an idea how I want things to be placed on my page. And then when it comes time to actually adhering things to my page, I know what I'm doing, and that's exactly what I did here. Right now what I'm doing is I'm just making sure none of the same patterns are bumping up against each other. You can kind of see how I'm placing them on my page. The top 3 hexagons are going to be reserved for photos. You may notice as well I cut out a bunch of hexagons in white scrap cardstock, and all of the layered hexagons, that would be the photos as well as the hexagons that have a second hexagon on top. The layers all have 2 additional layers of scrap cardstock underneath just to raise them up off the page. The ones that are adhered to the page itself, to the foundation page, are just flat to the page. So now I've sped up the film and I'm just adhering all of my hexagons to the page exactly, more or less exactly where I had placed them. I spend the most time adhering the first 3, and once I'm happy with the placement of that, then the other ones come along quickly. I'm just making sure that I'm happy with the placement so that the hexagons at the top and at the bottom basically land where I want them to land. So I've got this all adhered down, and I'm going to adhere some of the layers, but what I will keep separate once I do this are the photos. That's because I'm going to be layering up embellishing underneath them, and I want to keep them free for that at the time being. So right now I have a pile of scraps here, and those are all from the Tim Holtz Backdrops collection. So I'm using this punch here right now. It's called a Perennial Flower Punch, I think. And it's an old one from Stampin' Up. And basically what you do is you punch out 2 of them, or that's what I do anyway. And then you'll see in a moment, you adhere one on top of the other. And it makes this really nice, pretty flower. And I'm also punching out little circles. Those are 3/4 of an inch circles. That one is from Stampin' Up as well. And I'll put them in the middle. You'll see what I mean in a moment. If you do not have a perennial flower punch, this could be replaced with any flower punch. The same with this leaf punch as well. This one here is from Stampin' Up. I use it all the time, but obviously you can use any leaf punch you want. So what I'm going to do right now, you're going to see I'm going to adhere those petals together. You can see I've already done a bunch of them. And what I'm doing is simply adding a little bit of ink around the outside of those petals, just because this kind of has a nice distressed look already. So I'm just kind of adding to that. And then I'm going to adhere that 3/4 of an inch circle in the middle, and I'm just taking a bone folder to kind of curl up the petals a little bit. It just adds a little bit of dimension to the flower. Very subtle, but it is definitely there. Now what I'm doing is showing you 3 more punches. So I have a circle punch, a scalloped circle punch, and a little oak leaf. And what I'm going to do is create a very rudimentary chicken here. So I'm going to be doing it enough for 4, but I end up only using 1. So essentially to do this, you need a 2-inch circle punch, or any circle punch. I'm using a 2-inch circle punch. Then I'm cutting it in the middle. So I have 2 half circles. Now what I'm doing is taking a 7/8 of an inch scalloped circle punch, and I'm cutting that in the middle. And I'm doing all of this in that metallic cardstock from Tim Holtz. Now I'm taking an oak leaf punch. So I'm cutting out an oak leaf for each one of these chickens in that metallic paper. And I'm also going to use that red paper there. That is not from Tim Holtz. I was just looking for something red and distressed in my scrap pile. And I'm cutting out 4 more oak leaves. So for each oak leaf, I have a half a circle, half a scalloped small circle, and 2 oak leaves. What I'm going to do right now is get out my Big Shot, and I'm going to pass all of the pieces that are metallic through an embossing folder. And what I was looking for was any embossing folder that had kind of an irregular shape that was tight enough, because these are small pieces, so I didn't want a big embossed print. I wanted something quite tight. Mine, I think, is called Lacy Brocade from Stampin' Up. It would be really old because I haven't bought an embossing folder in a long, long time. And I'm going to run it through. And metallic paper in an embossing folder is super, super beautiful. You're going to see what I mean in a moment. And with those pieces, I'm going to be able to construct my chicken. So I'm just showing you what the pieces look like embossed. And I do want to point out, for the oak leaves and the scalloped circle, both of those can be replaced by a small heart. And when I put this together, you're just going to see you have to kind of use your imagination. For the oak leaf, for the red one, that's going to be the chicken cone as well as the beak. I'm basically positioning it on its side so the fluffy part of the leaf sticks out on the top part, the flat part of that half circle, and the stem kind of pokes out in front like a beak. With that half circle there, what I'm doing is putting it on the body of the chicken, and it's going to be the wing, and I did that with some foam adhesive. And for the other oak leaf, all I'm doing is adding a bit of adhesive at the tail end of the chicken and adding that, and that's its tail feathers. I'm going to do another one here just so that you can see what I'm doing. Again, I'm positioning the oak leaf on the side so that the fluffy part sticks out the top like a rooster cone and the stem out the front like a beak. I'm taking that wing, I'm adhering it on foam adhesive just so that you can, it sticks up a bit so that you can see it. You see it better in person. And again, I'm using that oak leaf for the tail feathers. You could do that with a small heart punch as well. And I positioned it so that I could have chickens in both directions in case I want to make them kiss. Now what I'm doing is adding a really tiny enamel dot on each one of them for an eye. I end up only using one of these, but I'll probably use the other ones on the coordinating page. So I'm getting out that chicken wire paper from Stampin' Up! As well as a few tags from Tim Holtz. And what I'm going to do is create 3 embellishment clusters. So I'm taking this chicken wire here, and I just want it to have more of an irregular shape. So I took my scissors to it, trimmed it up a bit, and I'm kind of layering it up underneath that main photo. And that's going to be where my main embellishment cluster is. I do love that floral paper underneath, but I find that photo kind of gets lost in it. But I did know in advance I would be doing some layering here. That's why I wasn't too worried. Also, I want to point out each one of those photos has 2 layers of hidden cardstock underneath, so they are raised up a bit. You saw as well I tucked in a tag behind that photo, and then I came in with some of those flowers, and now I'm poking in the leaves. When I create embellishment clusters, I always start with the bigger stuff like that chicken wire and the tags, and then gradually get smaller with the flowers as well as the leaves. You can see I put 2 more clusters around, smaller than the big one, but again, 2 more clusters, and they kind of surround the focal point photo. I'm not quite sure what to do with that chicken at this point. I'm looking at it towards the bottom. Anyway, what I'm going to do right now is adhere all of these loose pieces to the page. Again, when I'm creating these clusters, I start with the bigger pieces and then gradually come in with the smaller pieces. So I'm happy with that, but you are going to notice I end up leaving the chicken off for the time being. Normally at this point in the process, I would have already placed my title as well as my journaling spot. Well, I do know I want a small title, and it's going to kind of go underneath that focal point photo, and my journaling is going to go underneath. That I do know, but I'm not quite sure how it's going to go at this point. You can also see I took the scraps of that chicken wire that I had left, and I'm putting it in the 2 other clusters just to add a little bit of repetition of that chicken wire as well. I bet there's a chicken wire die out there, just thinking that. I'm not quite sure, but I bet there is. I think I'm going to have to try and look that up for when I run out of this chicken wire paper, because I do quite like it. Anyway, so now I'm showing you my title. I've got all of the embellishing down except the chicken, and I'm showing you a stamp set. It's an old one I got free actually from Stampin' Up! At one point, that says, enjoy the simple moments. It's from a set called Home to Roost. So I already stamped that out, and now what I'm showing you is a punch. It's called a Banners Pick-a-Punch from Stampin' Up! And basically it cuts out banners in a 1/2 inch, 3/4 inch, and 1 inch. So my title is on a 1/2 inch banner, and I'm making myself right now a 3/4 inch banner in that wood grain paper just to layer up underneath it. Even though my title's really small, I do want it to stand out a bit. That's why I layered it up in that wood grain paper, and you're going to see in a moment I will come in with some cardstock that I put behind it so that I can pop it up on foam adhesive. You can see me also playing around with that chicken as well, not quite sure what to do with it. And I also ended up moving that entire cluster up a little bit. It moved very easily, thankfully, because I do want room for my title there. And now, as you can see, I'm popping it up on foam adhesive. It is small, but I do want it to kind of stand up off the page a bit. There are a few more things that I'm going to want to do here for finishing touches as well. I do end up doing my journaling, of course, off camera. I end up putting that chicken up towards the top of the tag, and I'm happy with that, but I end up only using one of the chickens. Now what you see me doing is getting out this die set, and it is from Stampin' Up. It's called Stitched Labels Framelits Dies. And in it, there's this really tiny stitched heart. And I knew I wanted to put something small in those two small empty hexagons on the page. So I wanted hearts, and I thought I wanted something with stitching to repeat the other stitching. And this is a perfect example of knowing the tools you have in your stash, because this stamp set had not, this die set had nothing to do with hearts, but I knew it was there because I know my tools. And often I tell people to look through their tools frequently just to remind themselves of what they have. And that is why, because you end up realizing you have little gems in there that you may not otherwise know that you have. That's how I knew I had those stitched hearts. You can see there I added a reinforcer to my tag with a hole punch and a 1/2-inch circle punch, and then I added some twine, and I just showed you there a stencil. I think it's from Carta Bella. And what I did off camera was I added a bit of ink in lines with that stencil at the bottom, and then I added my journaling. So that's it for today, folks. I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't subscribed to my channel, Scrapbooking Quebec, I would be absolutely thrilled if you did. Also, be sure to check out the other participants. Their links are in the description box below. I hope you're having a fun summer, and I'll see you soon on YouTube. Bye-bye.